In the last lecture, we discussed the process that consumers go through when making a decision. Now let's look at what are the influencing factors of that process. Many forces impact us as we're trying to make a decision. Among those are the cultural factors, social factors, and personal factors. There's also the psychological factors, as we'll see shortly. Culture influences buyer behavior because it influences so many aspects of our daily lives. Culture determines what foods we eat, what clothes we wear, where we live, and even where we travel. For example, our family travels to China as often as possible, in part due to my wife's desire to visit her family. But we also visit to expose our children to their roots. When doing business in other countries, marketers must understand the impact that a country's culture has and adapt accordingly. Not taking culture into account has led many companies to experience failure in their global ventures. For example, Philips became profitable in the Japanese market only after reducing the size of its coffee makers to fit the smaller kitchens found in most Asian homes. Tang, the powdered orange drink, failed in France by not understanding that the French drink very little orange juice and almost never at breakfast. Subcultures, on the other hand, are groups of individuals with similar characteristics, values, and behaviors. They also have an influence on our buyer behavior. For example, members of a subculture purchase similar types of products in order to maintain their membership. Think about bikers and the clothes that they wear. People can be members of multiple subcultures, and not all behavioral patterns or values can be applied across all group members. Some cultures can also be based on demographic variables such as race and religion. Social class, on the other hand, is based on an aggregate of people's social rank, and members can move from one social rank to another based on their personal circumstances. While income does play a role, so does one's education and occupation. Let's look at an example of how culture could play a role in our behavior.
Je prends mon temps, je marche tout droit. Tu passes devant, je regarde tes yeux. Je donne l'amour pour aujourd'hui. Mais à demain, tu restes chez lui. Toy, boy, le monde se moque de moi. Je suis un toy, boy. Personne comprend pourquoi. Je suis un toy, boy. Le monde se moque de moi.
This ad for Hyundai would never play well here in the US, but in many parts of the world, especially Europe where it was actually shown, it had no bearing whatsoever, no impact on how people felt about Hyundai. But could you imagine what would happen if this was the Super Bowl ad? I think that a lot of people would be storming down their Hyundai dealerships the next day. Now this slide basically looks at the generic name for soft drinks across the US by county. And again, the US has many different subcultures. So if we look here, the counties in yellow use the term soda as a generic name for a soft drink, while those in blue use pop. However, in the South, the term is Coke, as in, would you like a Coke? Yeah, I'll have a 7-Up. This is likely due to the fact that Coca-Cola was created in Atlanta, which is also the site of the company's headquarters. And a couple of interesting facts that you can see on here. If you look up in Idaho, there is a little spot of yellow. Well, that is Sun Valley. Well, the reason for that, most of the people that have moved to Sun Valley are actually originally from California. They just took it with them. The same thing can be said in South Florida. A lot of these are New Yorkers who have moved down south, and they have taken with their term, soft drink, or soda, with them. Social factors such as reference groups, family, and role and status of an individual also play a role in our decision-making behaviors. Reference groups are groups that a person identifies with so strongly that the person begins to adopt the values, attitudes, and behaviors as other members of that group. People can associate with multiple groups at the same time, and they include families, work-related groups, fraternities, sororities, civic clubs, and professional organizations, etc. In general, there are 3 types of groups. 1, membership. That's a group that a person currently belongs to. There's also an aspirational group. Well, this is basically a group that we wish to belong to, and a disassociative group, which is a group we do not wish to be considered associated with. The roles that we hold in life, as a child, a spouse, boss, etc., will also influence our buying behavior as well as our general behavior. I have witnessed numerous times friends who, let's say, weren't on the straight and narrow path, changed their life when they found out they were going to be a parent. Our roles also alter the type of products that we purchase. For example, think about your wardrobe. Few of us wear the same clothes to work as we do to the gym or to work around the house or yard. We also follow the expectations of others and thus wear the appropriate clothing as needed. Consumers require different products at various stages of their life. The products a 12-month-old needs, diapers and formula, may not be the same as a 75-year-old, but maybe they are if we think about Depends diapers and Ensure drink being targeted towards senior citizen. But age is a major factor in the types of products being purchased. The same can also be said of the stage of life cycle that a consumer is experiencing. If we look at it, there are many different classifications of adults. We have singles, newly married, married with young children, married with teenage children, empty nesters, retired, etc. At each stage of the process, the products needed and thus purchased will vary due to family circumstances. Age may play a little role in this, but it's not always going to be the case. For example, there are some people that are getting married later in life, having children later in life. However, they are in the exact same stage of their life cycle when it comes to family. Although on the surface, one's personality type, compulsiveness, ambitious, introversion, could be some form of influence on a buyer's behavior. However, there's little evidence to support this link. But marketers still use personality types as a means of targeting various consumers. Think about a typical truck commercial. The images and people portrayed in the ads generally have a rugged, individualistic nature to them. Lifestyle, on the other hand, looks at how people spend their time, how they interact with others, and their general outlook on life. Lifestyle can influence the decision-making process in multiple ways, such as need recognition, the types of media consumed, as well as how and where they shop. Additional factors, such as occupation, economic status, and personal values, also contribute to the decisions that consumers make. However, these are generally included in other factors such as role and status. Understanding the personal factors of consumers plays a role in many areas of marketing. For example, Hamburger Helper, which was launched in 1971, was very successful because what the researchers found was that consumers, primarily women in this case, they weren't looking for the fastest meal possible, such as something in the microwave or putting a frozen dinner in the oven. They were looking for something that they had to put a little extra effort into, but still make it fast. As such, Hamburger Helper, which took very little time, gave them the feeling that they were actually contributing to their family's well-being. This next set of slides is just something I threw in here for fun. It came about from some research done by Advertising Age, and all they did was they went out and they talked to consumers. They were getting what kind of products do you buy, what do you believe, what do you think, things like this, and they kind of took all that data and started putting together groups based on their beer consumption. So let's look at these. For example, if you're a Budweiser drinker, you're sensible, grounded, and practical. Highly focused, you don't like authority, heavily union. Emotionally steady, spontaneous, drive a truck, select a credit card with flexible payment plans, and more likely to use breath freshening products. However, if you look at the counterpart of that, Bud Light. Here the people were lacking in carefulness, grounded but respected authority, risk-seeking, accepting of others, easy to get along with, heavy lottery players, and less likely to purchase organic goods. Now, some of this stuff may not make a lot of sense, but when you're putting together an advertising campaign, you might want to start taking into consideration how do people perceive themselves when they're buying products. Michelob Ultra. Members of this group, if you will, rate high on self-superiority, or superiority, self-rating, of course. They care what others think of them. They want to appear perfect, take charge types, opinionated, confrontational, and heavy buyers of life insurance. That makes sense considering the fact that they are opinionated and confrontational. They probably need it. And these buyers make sustainability a priority. Corona drinkers, though, they have the where's the party attitude. They're busy and energetic, very extroverted. They're people, altruistic, think of themselves as giving in warm, buy recycled products, and own 3 or more flat screen TVs. Just a couple more here. Heineken, they're posers. They believe they are exceptional, score low on modesty, high on self-esteem, and they love brand badges, such as the green bottle. It's kind of hard to get a bottle, even an empty bottle, away from a Heineken drinker because they want people to know that's what they're drinking. They're attracted to luxury products, love being the center of attention, carry the American Express card, early adopters of new technology, and they drive sports cars. Blue Moon, basically are socially liberal, go against convention, hate moral authority, use sarcasm and snide remarks to get points across. Maybe they're very similar to Michelob Ultra drinkers. Drive hybrid cars, Apple Mac users, buy 5 or more pair of sneakers a year, and they're likely to not be registered to vote. Those that drink like craft brews or local brews, they spend a lot of time thinking about beer. That kind of makes sense. They're open-minded, seek out new experiences, intellectually curious, lower sense of responsibility. They don't stress deadlines, happy-go-lucky, buy organic products, and they're fans of the show, The Office. So again, it's just a way of looking at how people perceive themselves and how people react in different situations. Motivation is an internal force that drives us towards satisfying our needs or achieving our goals. Consumers are influenced heavily by a number of things that motivate them. And there's been a lot of research in this area, and a lot of it has been linked back to Sigmund Freud, Maslow, and Herzberg. Freud basically looked at the psychological forces that shape people's behaviors, and that he believed that all of this stuff was unconscious. We didn't really understand why we liked a brand. We just knew that we do could be a way of looking at it. Maslow believed that people were driven by different needs at different times. According to him, human needs are arranged in a hierarchy from most to least pressing. We're going to see this in the next slide. Herzberg, though, developed a 2-factor theory that distinguished things that dissatisfy us, anything that causes dissatisfaction we want to tend to shy away from, or satisfiers, which basically are factors that cause satisfaction. We will tend, as human beings, to gravitate towards satisfiers and away from things that make us dissatisfied. In developing his hierarchy of needs, Maslow basically looked at the most basic level first, physiological needs. And according to Maslow, if we relate it to consumer behavior, is that consumers first think about their most basic needs: food, water, shelter. Once we have resolved those issues, then we start thinking about our safety needs, security, protection, things like this. Then we move on to social needs, esteem needs, and self-actualization needs. Now, marketers have to understand that in many ways Maslow was right on point. For example, if you're hungry, if you have no food, if you're homeless, you're not really thinking about the next car you want to buy. You're not thinking about anything other than finding food, water, shelter. But when we get to safety needs, it's kind of the same thing. We have to feel secure, we have to feel safe, our need for protection is very high. But once that is resolved, then we kind of flow between 3, 4, and 5, steps 3, 4, and 5, and we move in and out of these. Now, manufacturers, they use these needs as a way to target and go after certain consumers. For example, if you think about many of the commercials for alarm systems, they're almost always the same. Somebody, a husband's talking to the wife on the phone. The wife hears a noise. It scares her. He's 1,000 miles away. He can't do anything about it. He's not protecting his family. So he comes home and he buys a security system. But if you look at others, think about how car manufacturers. Well, Volvo taps into the safety need, right? That's one of the things that they look at, and that's one of the things that they promote about their automobiles is how safe they are. But BMW and BMW, Lexus, and this type basically go to the top toward esteem needs and self-actualization needs to say, hey, I finally belong because I own a BMW. While motivation will drive a person to take action, their perception of the situation they face will influence how they will act. To a marketer, perception is more important than reality because perceptions affect a consumer's actual behavior. Perception is the process of selecting, organizing, and interpreting information in a way to try to create order from what they are seeing. For example, take two consumers with seemingly identical needs, personalities, motivations, etc. They may view an advertisement in two different ways. One may be offended by the ad, while the other is compelled toward purchase. The difference lies in their perception of what was viewed. These differences are the result of three perceptual processes: attention, retention, and distortion. As humans, we pay attention to only part of the information and stimuli we receive each day. Our brains have a way to filter out a lot of the noise we hear and focus on what we feel are the most important bits of information. Because of this filter consumers have, marketers work to ensure that their messages make it through these filters and are received. There are numerous videos on YouTube that will test your attention if you're interested. One of them is the gorilla playing, or the basketball and the gorilla. If you'll do a search for it, you'll find it. So one of the other examples that we can look at with selective attention is that we might have experienced something that might have happened to us many times. For example, you get a new car, or new to you, and you're driving around and all of a sudden you start noticing other people driving the exact same model car that you have. This is a way that we have selectively started focusing on certain bits of information. Other things that you may notice is that we will pay attention to large differences rather than small differences. For example, we might notice a deal offering $100 off the price of an $800 television, which is a 12.5% discount. But we may omit and not even pay attention to an offer of $5 off the price of a $20 Blu-ray movie, which is a $25 discount or 25% discount. So oftentimes the information we receive in our heads, we look at it in very different ways. So with selective retention though, people tend to remember or forget information that supports or differs from their attitudes and beliefs. This seems to be especially true with the case of political ads these days. And often consumers will distort information in ways to fit some preconceived notion they hold. They could alter their perception based on previous experiences with a brand. For example, when Coors changed their label on their beer from a banquet beer to one stating it was an original draft, consumers claimed that the taste had changed, even though how it was brewed, nothing changed whatsoever. Can you find the mistake here? It may have taken you a couple of minutes to realize that "the" is in the sentence twice. Well, this is because of our perception. We oftentimes just make quick shortcuts of what we're seeing in order to process things faster. At a basic level, learning is a change in behavior due to experience. From a consumer behavior perspective, though, learning is based on the process that consumers go through when they acquire information and experience about a consumption, which is then applied to future buying behaviors. Scholars have studied learning from many different perspectives, although most will fall into one of two schools of thought, either behavioral learning or cognitive learning. Behavioral learning focuses on the inputs, stimuli if you will, and the outputs or behavior. The two main streams of thought in behavioral learning are classical conditioning and instrumental conditioning. Most of you have heard the story of Ivan Pavlov and his salivating dogs, where the dogs were conditioned to salivate at the sound of a bell which signaled that food was available. This is an example of classical conditioning. Instrumental conditioning, on the other hand, is based on the work of B.F. Skinner and looks at altering behavior through the use of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, or punishment. While these conditioning theories have proven to be effective in certain situations, anyone with children know they don't always work. The cognitive learning approach argues that learning takes place due to the mental processing of information and requires higher order learning processes such as thinking, reasoning, and observation. Wolfgang Kohler, a German psychologist, conducted a series of experiments on a chimpanzee named Sultan. Sultan was placed in a cage with a banana some distance away where he couldn't reach it, and Sultan was given 2 sticks where one of the sticks could fit inside the other, making it longer. And if this was done, Sultan could therefore reach the banana. Although he tried to reach the banana, first with his hand and then with each of the sticks separately, Sultan finally gave up and started playing with the sticks. Through this play, one of the sticks actually ended up being inserted into the other, creating the longer stick. Sultan immediately realized what had happened, and he used the sticks to reach the banana. This is learning. Oftentimes we learn through experience of when we buy a product, how well it's going to be meeting the needs that we have, and we learn, hey, anytime I need that type of, I'm facing that situation again, I'll buy this product. Until recently, decision making was viewed as a purely cognitive process. However, we have since learned that consumers do not always respond cognitively and rationally. Under the cognitive style, a buyer would make an estimation of which of the various options available to them would deliver the most positive results and choose that option. However, researchers have discovered that many of the decisions we make are strongly influenced by our emotions, especially given the large amount of information that we are getting inundated with today. The seminal study in this area came from the lab of Antonio Damasio, a neurologist who studied people whose prefrontal cortex was damaged to a point where they could not experience emotion. In his study, Damasio found that the individuals cannot even make the simplest decision. As such, emotions have been known to play a big role in our decision making. We also know that by using emotional decision making, we do things a lot faster than strictly doing a rational decision making. However, we then use the rational reasoning that we find to justify our emotional decisions. So emotions play a large role in branding, as brands can make people feel proud, excited, or confident. Marketers develop ads to elicit feelings of amusement, disgust, fear, guilt, or wondering, all of which are emotional responses. Many marketers have begun to focus on emotional storytelling in building their brands. You can witness emotional branding in many commercials today as they seek to tug on your heartstrings of customers. Most Coca-Cola commercials focus on the emotional connections that consumers have with their product.
Where am I?
You've been in a coma for 6 months.
Who are you?
I'm your daddy. This here's your brother Earl.
Don't you worry. They're holding your job at the sewer plant.
Your sister Beulah.
I missed you.
And of course, your wife. Oh, we had to sell one of your kidneys to help cover the bill.
You're gonna have to wear a diaper.
It ain't so bad.
Hey, you're not Cletus.
Memory plays a big role in the types of products we buy, how we shop, where we spend our money. For example, imagine that you're out at a nice restaurant, you're with a companion, you have a great meal, the food is excellent, the service is just perfect, the decor, everything is just going great. At the end of the meal, your waiter or waitress comes over to bring more coffee and spills coffee in your lap. What's the memory you're going to take away from that restaurant? Was it how good the food was? Or is all you're going to remember the waitress spilling coffee on you? That's how important memories are going to play out. Now, when we think about memories from a consumer behavior perspective, oftentimes we look at the brand association. Many times in research, if we hear a brand name or see a brand or anything along those lines, we will have a key element that's going to pop into our head. For example, if we take Subaru, we're going to think four-wheel drive. But we're also going to have these brand associations, these other elements that are going to come across. For example, Subaru, you may imagine the outdoors. You may see skiing, stylish, dependable, rugged. All of these things, marketers spend a lot of effort trying to associate their brands with key terms. Marketers have to also understand about attention and gaining attention. The average adult can pay attention for about 20 minutes, and that's about it before their mind starts to wander. For children, though, the amount of time they can pay attention is their age in minutes. And for a goldfish, it's about 9 seconds. Oftentimes, I wish my kids could measure up to a goldfish because they can't seem to pay attention to anything I say sometimes.
I hate Mondays.
Yeah, they're the worst.
No worries, man. Everything will be all right. Yeah, man. Don't fret me, brother. Sticky bun come soon. Yeah. Wicked coffee, Mr. Jim. Julia, turn the frown the other way around.
Hey, Dave, you're from Minnesota, right?
Yes, the land of 10,000 lakes. The Gopher State.
So in conclusion, things are pretty dismal.
You know what this room needs? A smile. Who wanna come with I?
Traveling along, there's a song that we're singing. Come on, get happy.
You guys are 3 minutes late.
Don't be no cloud on a sunny day.
Yeah, chill, Winston.
Sir?
Respect, bossman.
That's the power of German engineering.
So to briefly recap, marketers spend a lot of time, energy, and effort and money trying to get consumers to buy their product. We do this through our advertisements, we do this through product placement, we do this through many different efforts, all because we're trying to influence the decision-making process that consumers have. But in between our advertisement and the consumer action, there's going to be the psychological characteristics such as their motivation and perception that are going to alter their processes. We need to understand how those processes are going to influence the decision-making process.